Okay, we're going to get started in a few minutes here. If you're watching online, I hope you enjoyed Asher running back and forth over on this whole Bima thing. So that was fun. So we're about ready to get started. So welcome and thank you for joining us for Shabbat Shalom. So thrilled that you're all here. So we're going to have Brenda light candles for us. Here, let's go for it. If you want to follow along, it's on page 120 of your prayer books. Brenda, you got the blessing right there. Yeah. Thanks, Brenda. Appreciate it. Okay, and then I'm going to invite the Mitri brothers up here. How you guys doing? Okay. All right, so we're going to start on page 128 of our prayer books, which is Hine Matov. Let's you guys just take it away.
Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov, ya la 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 la. Hine Matov, ya la 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 la. Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov, ya la 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 la. Hine Matov, ya la 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 la.
You know, I know it wasn't intentional, but I kind of like the way that the guitar came in like a few minutes. That was intentional. It was intentional. Right, of course. Yeah, it was intentional. Yeah. Okay, we're moving on to Lecha Dodi on page 138, and it's 1, 5, and 9 that we're doing today.
1,
1, 5, and 9, and when we arrive on the 9th paragraph, we invite you all to stand up and greet the entrance as we greet the Shabbat bride.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Shamor v'zachor b'diburecha, ishmi'anu el hamicha. Adonai echad u'shemo echad, l'shemo tiferet v'letila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri, ki ba'orek u'mi'ori. Uri, shidaberi, kevod Adonai alayim nigla. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shalom עטרת בלה, גם בשמחה ובתולה, תוך אמוני עם סגורה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, מפני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, מפני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, מפני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, מפני שבת נקבלה.
You may be seated. Moving on to Shalom Aleichem on page 142.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon. Melech Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Roachem leShalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzidkem leShalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Moving on to, where are we going? No, Chatzikash on page 144. Yit Gedal v'Yit Gedash Shemei Rabbah Be'elma Divrach Yotev Yamlik Malchutei B'chayechon uvyomechon Uchayerechol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala Uvizman Kariv V'imaru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevarach Le'alam Ulal Me'al Mayam Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yipar V'yipramam V'yitnaseh V'yithadar V'yitale V'yitalal Shemei Kedusha B'reichu Le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'elma v'imaru. Amen. We now move into the Baruch Hu on page 146. When you arrive there, I invite you to rise with us.
La 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 Baruch hu et Adonai Hamevorach. Baruch Adonai Hamevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai Hamevorach le'olam va'ed.
Aravim on page 148.
Umaviyom, umevi laila. Umavil ben yom uben laila. Adonai tzvot shemo, El chai v'kayam, tamidim lo. Aleinu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, Amari v'aravim. Umaviyom, umevi laila. Umavil ben yom uben laila. Adonai tzvot shemo, El chai v'kayam, tamidim lo. Aleinu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, Amari v'aravim. Ya la la la, 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 la 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 la, ya 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 la la la.
We're now going to move over to the top of page 151. I'm going to invite you all to read the English with me. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch atah Adonai Ohev Omo Yisrael. For the Shema on page 152, we're going to recite it together as a community. We're going to move on to Baruch Hashem, kind of quietly to ourselves. But before we go to the Via Hafta, we're going to sit down for a few moments of silent reflection and meditation. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kivod Malechuto Leolam Va'ed. One, 5, 4. V'yahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levacha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meyodecha v'hayuhu ha'devarim ha'elem asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinartam levarnecha b'divartam bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha Ubetecha havaderech, ushofpecha uvkumecha, ukshartam leyot al yadecha, v'hayu totafot beineinecha, uktaftam al mezuzot beitecha, uvisharecha. Lema'an tizkeru v'atzitem et chol mitzvotai, v'tem kiroshim leloechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem Asher hotzeti etchem meretz Mitzrayim liot lachem leElohim Ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem Emet. Now we move over to Micha Mocha on page 158.
Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, mi kamocha, hai Madonna, mi kamocha, edava kodesh, norati lo tosefele, norati lo tosefele, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, la 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 la, ya la 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 la, la 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 la.
And on to the summary on page 162.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. בני ובין, בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
Okay. All right, y'all. Why don't we turn to page 164, and when you arrive there, I invite you to stand with us. Adonai sefatitah ufia yitahilatecha. Adonai sefatitah ufia yitahilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu V'Imotenu Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, Ha'Gibor, Ha'Norah, El Elyon, Elohei Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei HaKol, V'Zocher Hasei Alot V'Imahot. Maybe Gula Lipianehem, Leman Shemo Yahava, Melchozer Mashiach Magi, Baruch atah Adonai, Magin Abraham, Ezrak Sarah, Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai, Mekayel Kol Atah Yoshia, Mashiach Ruach Marim HaKashem. Mechakel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim,
Somek noflim veropet holim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato, bishenei afar, michamo chaval yipurot, umidom elah, melech memit umekayem, Umashniach Yeshua, Ne'emanatal Chayotako, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mekayeh Hakol.
Okay, we're now going to continue silently until page 180. You may be seated whenever you like.
Ose shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Ose shalom bimroma, Yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, Yaseh shalom. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
Thanks, gentlemen. So I've worn glasses for quite a while. I've got my first pair of glasses, I think in 4th grade. So you can imagine that I've seen the optometrist quite a bit. So one year, maybe when I was like 12 or 13, I was at the optometrist. He was checking out my eyes. And he says that thing that I think we're all kind of scared of when we see a doctor, the whole like, that's interesting kind of comment. It wasn't great. But at that age, I didn't really fully understand like kind of the enormity of that small little sentence when a doctor says that. But after the checkup, he came to me and my parents, and he told me that I either have glaucoma in my right eye or my optic nerve is doing something kind of funky and maybe a little too big, but he needs to run more tests. So one outcome could lead to possible blindness, and the other outcome is just have a weird thing going on with my eye, but I would be fine. And so this is like a crazy moment. The moment where there's only going to be one of two outcomes. One of these outcomes is potentially life-changing, but this outcome has not actually happened yet. And what's weird is that I can't think of a word for this moment in English. What do we call these moments that precipitate a possible life-changing event? However, Hebrew does have a word for it, and that word is mispachat. If I were to translate this word to English, it would be rough translation is skin rash, which is weird, I know. But Hebrew uses this word for skin rash as a moment before one or two outcomes. But soon you're going to see why the Israelites are actually quite clever in using this term, mispachat. So pretend that you, for a moment, live in a community with limited medical expertise. Your pal, let's call him Shlomo, suddenly breaks out in unsightly red blotches all over his face. Now, you and Shlomo are good buds, but you don't want red blotches all over your face. Thus, Shlomo, being a good community member, reports himself to the officials, who are not doctors, but priests. Remember, this community has limited medical expertise. Thus, priests have no capacity to diagnose Shlomo. They really only have one tool in their arsenal, and that's quarantine. Now, that's an alarming word today in our society, and thanks to COVID, it's kind of a four-letter word. But without medical professionals, it's kind of clever, because mispachat could go one of two ways. It could just turn out to be mispachat, a mild rash, or it could be sa'arat, which is a scary word in the Bible when we don't utter it too loudly. It's a little bit, it has like the Voldemort rules, if you will. Now, sa'arat is problematic in two ways. First off, it's very contagious. If Shlomo has sa'arat, then he could easily pass it on to his friends. Sa'arat could possibly kill you, unless it doesn't, because priests are not medical professionals. Which leads me to the second problem of this word. Some of you may be thinking, well, Rabbi Abram, I happen to know that sa'arat is translated as leprosy, which is of course deadly. If any of you were thinking of that, bravo, you get some rabbi brownie points for that thought. But the Greek translation of sa'arat is leper, which sounds a lot like leprosy. However, leper actually does not mean deadly skin disease. Leper just means scaly skin. The deadly skin disease confused for leprosy is actually called Hansen's disease, just FYI. But back to our priest. So Shlomo either has a mild form of mispachat, or a rash, or sa'arat, a contagious skin disease that may or may not be deadly. The priest put Shlomo in quarantine for 7 days. If it goes away, great. Shlomo has mispachat. If it stays the same, then Shlomo needs to stay in quarantine for 7 more days. After 14 days, it's finally time for the priest to make a decision. Think of 14 days of not knowing one of two outcomes, and one of them being life-changing. It's a horrible situation that I think many of us have experienced. The priests may not know much about modern medicine, but they are experts in something called purity. Priests normally live in a binary world where people are pure or impure. It's a temporary state of being. For example, touching a diseased body, impure. Sacrificing a bull and sprinkling its blood on the altar, pure. In order to converse with God, one must be pure. And which is why mispachat is so problematic for priests. Mispachat does make an individual impure. That's clear for the priests. But it also has the capacity to make the whole community impure if it turns out to be contagious, and thus sa'arat. So for the sake of communal purity, a person with mispachat must be quarantined from 7 to 14 days. And being in a mispachat situation takes a huge toll on a person. No one is good at waiting for potentially bad news. The fact that we don't have a name for this is kind of ridiculous because COVID has put our entire society in a state of mishpachat for 2 years. Well, really like sarad if you think about it, but I'm gonna call it mishpachat for now. Not having a word that describes the toll of waiting for a possible bad news means that we can't name it. If we can't name it, we can't understand how to heal from it. But it's important to understand that waiting for potential bad news is emotionally, mentally, and physically draining ordeal. An ordeal that competes with our cognitive and emotional bandwidth. So if you or someone that you love is short with you or someone, has trouble focusing, or has a difficult time enjoying hobbies that they usually love, you all are not alone. COVID is horrible and has deeply affected all of us in ways humanity is still grasping to understand. But the good news is I don't have glaucoma. I waited and I felt like I got lucky. Not just because I was cleared of a life-changing diagnosis, but I had the support system to wait with me. Well, I don't have an English name for mishpachat. We don't have to wait for bad news alone. Our community is a support system, and we can at least wait together. We just have to admit that waiting is hard. Thank you. We're now going to move on to the Misha Berach, our prayer for healing on page 371 of your prayer books. And before we sing the song, I'm going to read names of our community members who are in need of healing. Tina Mink, Chris Converse, Jennifer Eskridge, Ian Clift, David Tobias, Katie Flagel, Lindsay Raber, Micah Purdy, Cheryl Lambriani, Laura Allen, Susan Super, Mary Jo Robinson, Melba Cook, Emmy Webb, Stephen Lamp, Russell Crass, Bill Ross, Alan Friedman, Russ Nog, Ross Rumack, Norma Haas, Ray Ellis, Judy Cantor, Carol Ribbon, Diane Kaplan, Craig Paulus, Philip Kaufman, Nicole Neeson, Jane Anderson, Louis Mayer, Lillian Mayer, Margie Bauman, Ariel Lamp, Emily Weaver, Ginger Spiro, Jen Carolyn Hardy, and James Brown Sr. If there's someone who you are thinking of, please say their names in your hearts or out loud.
Mi sheberach avotenu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
We are playing with the Elenu, which you can find on page 587 of your prayer books. When you do, I invite you to rise and sing with us. Turn to page 591. May we gain wisdom in our lives, overflowing like a river with understanding. Love each of us for the peace we bring to others. May our deeds exceed our speech. May we never lift up our hands, but to conquer fear and doubt and despair. Rise up at the sun, O God, over all humanity. Cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas. And light up the universe with the joy of wholeness, of freedom, and of peace. We now turn to the Mourner's Kaddish, which you can find on page 598 in your prayer books. And in our own community, we're thinking about these yard sites this week. Beth Alexander, Julia Barney, Gussie Brown, Noah Connors, Harold Kaufman, Kim Miller, Amelia Rohde, Eric Solberg, and Edith Weinberg. And we're currently in a Shiva for Charlie Soter. If you're thinking about someone, please feel free to say their names out loud or in your hearts. Zikronom livracha, may the memories be for a blessing. Yit gadal v'yit gadash shemei rabba, bi'alma divra chayote v'yamlik malchute, v'chayechon u'vyamechon u'vchayeda chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kari v'yamru, amen. Yehi shmei rabba mebarak le'olam u'lamei almaya. Yitbarak v'yishtabak v'yitpa'ar v'yipromam v'yitnaseh. V'tadar v'tale v'tala shmei kudusha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata. Da'almiran v'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleni v'akol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Osei shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleni v'akol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. You may be seated. Okay, announcements. I guess the first one I'm gonna, just because I can't stop thinking about it, is Passover. We are gonna do this. We're gonna have an in-person Passover Seder, the first time in 2 years. Sign-ups our registration is now available, and we've sent out emails at this point. So it's going to be on April 16th, starting at 6 p.m. is when we're going to have our Passover Seder. A couple of cool things. There's going to be a great Afikomen hunt, and there's also going to be the Exodus Story Challenge. Can't wait to explain to what that is at Passover, but you'll know then. Anyway, so we're working feverishly on that one. We've got a lot of great volunteers helping us. Thank you so much. And we're full steam ahead. So Passover Community Seder. Yes, limited registration. I think it's we're doing 120. Yes. We're trying to keep it a little bit low. Okay. Now other announcements. Even though that one's just consuming my life. What else we got going on? Tomorrow we got our normal text study at 10:30, and we got liturgy, right? Exploring liturgy tomorrow at 9:30. 9:30 exploring liturgy. Text study at 10:30, all in our Zoom room. And then we have religious school on Sunday here in person, starting at what time we leave school? 10, I think 10. And then we have morning menu at 8 a.m. on Wednesday. So that's what's going on this week. Am I forgetting anything? 10 plagues, right? That we need more signups. That's our softball team. So I'm sorry. It's really fun. Yes, it's really fun. So 10 plagues, and you can talk to it's Glenn, right? Yeah. So if you don't know who that is, you can reach out to me, and I'll direct you to Glenn. So yes, I think they need a few more players, right? So yeah, 10 plagues, and that'll be throughout the summer. And then any other announcements? Okay. We got closing melody, fellas. You've been looking, you're like feverishly trying to figure it out. He's like, shoot, Rabbi's wrapping up. We gotta figure this out.
We're gonna do Lois.
Oh, I see a little argument over here. Lois Agoy. Was it like, okay, Lois Agoy. What page? Ooh, 6:45. Rabbi points for Daniel Cliff.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
לא יישא גוי אל גוי חרב, ולא ילמדו עוד מלחמה. לא יישא גוי אל גוי חרב, ולא ילמדו עוד מלחמה. לא יישא גוי חרב, ולא ילמדו עוד מלחמה. לא יישא גוי אל גוי חרב, ולא ילמדו עוד מלחמה. לא יישא גוי אל גוי חרב, ולא ילמדו עוד מלחמה.
Thank you, meet your brothers. They're going to be at our community Seder, right? We talked about that? Okay, yes. So we're going to hear their music at the community Seder. Awesome. Shabbat Shalom, y'all. I'm so glad you're able to come and make it. And then for those of you online, thank you for being here. And we'll see you next time. So Shabbat Shalom. Do you guys know Ma Nishchagan?
I think we've done it. I think we've done it once. Yeah.
Okay, I love it if you guys can figure it out for
Oh, this is from Passover?
yeah, Passover.
I got thrown off because Josh was trying to go Canada.
Yeah.
How do we do that as a post?
Yeah.
So it was kind of weird.
Yeah.
So you got us off guard.
We got my first year of rabbinical school, the cantors decided to sing "O Canada." Yeah, I don't know why. So they all had like the mission of the field out, and they're all singing "O Canada." It's just surreal. Yeah. And that's good.
It has Mexico?